So we're ready to roll. Clerk Gainsworth now?
Yes, thank you. We are streaming and yes, now we do have quorum. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Can I have the mover and seconder to do that, please? Councillor Moore and Councillor Hanna. At the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of May 31, 2021, come to order at 5:01 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. Due to COVID, council is taking the necessary steps to limit in-person meetings. As such, members of council are participating and staff are participating electronically, and the meeting is being live streamed. Residents can watch the meeting live at the township's website, www.springwater.ca. They can listen to it by phone during the meeting by calling 647-558-0588 and using the following ID, 869-9014-4146 and the pound sign. Those who wish to watch the streaming after the meeting can watch the video on the township's YouTube channel, accessible through the website. Council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? All right, seeing none, we move forward with the 3.1 in the agenda, County Municipal Comprehensive Review, Springwater comments. So I'll turn it over to Director Spagnell and Planner Chris Russell to introduce the report and guide the discussion, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Planner Russell, he will not be commenting on this. This is a report that's coming from me. I'm sorry to disappoint.
No, we look forward to that, Director Spagnell.
Oh, that's fine. So the County Municipal Comprehensive Review process, the purpose of the report is really to provide council with information and provide an opportunity for council to ask questions with respect to the Municipal Comprehensive Review being conducted by the county. It's also to provide an overview of staff comments that staff feels are necessary to provide in through the county process, to which comments would be forwarded off to the county by way of a letter immediately following council's endorsement, as the county has initiated its Section 26 public meeting, which is to take place on June 8th. And in addition to that is to provide council with the opportunity to add to the submission and the correspondence to the county with respect to any pressing matters that Springwater Council would like to have brought on the radar through the county process. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to provide an overview of the report, just indicating the purpose of the Municipal Comprehensive Review. I'll provide just a brief overview of what staff's general comments are, and then provide a brief overview of what staff understands council's comments to be with respect to two key items that have been raised in previous council meetings. So the county's MCR process is really the background or the information work that the county needs to do to bring the county official plan into conformity with the Greater Golden, or with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. What it does is it will look at, and the county will conduct a number of different reviews that look at growth management, which includes population allocation, settlement, growth forecast, and servicing across the county. It's through that process that the county will actually be allocating population growth to municipalities through an official plan update. The county will also be drafting an employment strategy, which will take a look at key nodes for employment and potential policies to protect employment to ensure that there's jobs being created that are in line with the population that is coming to the county. The process is also intended to provide an opportunity to refine agricultural system mapping and environmental natural heritage mapping. And in addition to that, it's also to update county policies with respect to climate change and to take a look at a water management type plan to deal with environmental and natural heritage considerations. basically the county has to have, and it's legislated that the county have this process completed by July 2022. This is a quite extensive process in that there's 16 area municipalities, and I would say that there are some pretty important considerations that are going to have to be dealt with through this. I don't want to be negative in to say that such a process, I think, is a daunting task to have completed within a year, or roughly just over a year, just because of some of the key issues that are being considered through this. You will have key stakeholders across the county who are looking to have lands developed. You will have, stakeholder groups such as environmentalists who are looking for enhanced policy protections for the environment. You will have municipalities who are looking for various, policy changes to reflect their interests. So it is a comprehensive process, and it is a very big process to undertake over, running up into July 2022. So specifically, if you take a look at the report, there's a brief overview of what each study is to incorporate as part of the information package that the county is going to be looking at to round out through its consultants. And then the report also goes through some general comments. Now, I can go through the, Mayor Allen, I can go through the general comments listed in the chart if you would like, just to provide an overview.
Yeah, I think that would be good to do, Director Spagnell, just to refresh us.
Okay, so the first part of the process would be the provincial natural heritage system review and refinement. And I think it was probably just previous to this council's term that the province was looking at revising their provincial natural heritage system mapping. And what ended up happening was there was quite a bit of comments, or quite a few comments received from various stakeholders who wanted to see a local approach taken to refining this mapping based on local knowledge. So essentially what happened was the mapping refinements were delegated, and I would say transferred over to the county's process through the municipal comprehensive review. And it's really through this process that the province is looking for the county to canvass local municipalities to determine what changes to the mapping or revisions to the provincial mapping may be appropriate. Now, the county has said that the revisions to the mapping would mostly reflect revisions to some of the fringe of the natural heritage system, but it's through the county's process that the township of Springwater, through conversations and discussions with its agricultural advisory committee and its planning advisory committee, along with the official plan review work, that Springwater has the ability to provide local information for the county's consideration when we're dealing with those refinements, that natural heritage mapping. So key things may be if there's certain aspects, local existing land uses that maybe should not be included in the fringes of those areas, it's an opportunity to provide comments in that respect to make sure that the mapping is accurate. So from a timing perspective, what staff is proposing is that any of the work that was completed through the official plan review, so the designation mapping that is done, in consultation with the Agricultural Advisory Committee and the Planning Advisory Committee, that mapping be relied upon by County Council and by county staff. But in addition to that, there will be subsequent conversations where staff will be reaching out to those advisory committees to take a look at the mapping, the draft mapping that's provided by the county, to look at potential refinements. So it'll be an ongoing discussion that's going to have to occur leading up over the next year to year and a half. Again, the mindset and the intention there is to get local knowledge and local input so that can be moved up and considered through the refinements to the provincial mapping. Any questions from council in that respect?
Director Spagnell, you talked about the mechanics generally. So can you just get a little more granular on that? So you talked about the involvement of the ag committee, the mechanics and the timing. So what will be the actual process? And what's the deliverable?
Okay, thank you, Mayor Allen. So the process, essentially, the staff went out and had a meeting with the Agricultural Advisory Committee. I want to say it was in 2019, regarding the mapping that was on the table from an environmental standpoint. So the next step will be to circle back to Agricultural Advisory Committee with the mapping from the official plan review process to show that committee, along with the planning committee, planning advisory committee, the draft mapping. That mapping would be forwarded off to the county, at which point the county will have to come forward with draft natural heritage system mapping for further review. Staff would then reintroduce that mapping for further comments to the advisory committees, so that we can provide focused comments on that proposed mapping and get additional input from the advisory committees. And it's at that point where comments again would be relayed through council and then on to the county for their MCR process and their consideration.
And you see the timing of this being?
The timing is a tough question, Mayor Allen. I can say that this won't be in the short term, just because in short term meaning, over the upcoming summer months, just because of the amount of work that will have to go into this. But staff will ensure that there's definitely due notice as to where some of what the timeframes are for this work to be completed in. And then essentially make sure that we are going to the advisory committees to provide enough lead time for informative comments, and then circling back to council. So I can't put a timestamp on what the time would be on this, other than we would have to follow the county process and the time associated with when they're trying to meet their deliverables. But I do not suspect this getting done by July 2022.
Right. So because the process of going back and getting the ag committee input is, being clear on what it is we're after, how the determination is made, and then them taking it away and then coming back with their comments, right?
Yes, correct. So these would the county would have to come back with draft mapping for their process.
Right.
Again, for local municipalities to review and provide comment before they're going to bring those maps forward for consideration and approval. And that would ultimately have to come back to council for consideration as well.
Okay. Any other comment on this item? Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Director Spagnol. The corridor study, in the report here, it says a draft. It's my understanding it is a draft. We haven't got the final report on the corridor studies, so we're sending on a draft. Is that appropriate?
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Hanna. Through the official plan review, staff, the county requested that they receive draft documents ahead of time so that they could be brought up to speed. I would say at this point it's appropriate, recognizing that it's not the final report, and ultimately any revisions to that report would be recirculated to the county. The intention is that at least we can flag as a township that there is work being done in this respect, to give the county the heads up and the local information that forms part of that. But again, recognizing that report still needs to be finalized and completed.
Appreciate it, because my concern is not with some of the information in the corridor study, just how they identified how Bayfield Street was going to be designed. And I wouldn't want to see me anyway supporting that if that was the final document. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Allen, if I could, I would just like to reiterate that those reports are in draft form, and there will have to be a subsequent staff report that brings them in their final form for council's receipt, so that the township can move forward with the Springwater official plan review. So that will need to come back to council before it's finalized.
An estimated timing for that is?
Well, we just received committee of adjustment comments, so we're hoping, staff are hoping to have something come forward in that respect within the next month to month and a half.
Okay. All right, I think you can continue.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The provincial agricultural system review is similar to the provincial natural heritage system review. Staff envisions the same process that was outlined for the natural heritage refinements, along with the same mechanics as it relates to how the process would work. Again, it's a matter of going back to Agricultural Advisory Committee with any of the draft mapping that's completed through the official plan review, trying to refine that mapping, and then sending that off to the county for their review. And again, there would have to be a revised agricultural system mapping or a draft agricultural system mapping completed as part of the county process. And again, staff and the advisory committees would be provided the ability to review, and then staff would bring a report to council for additional comments to inform the county's position. So it's essentially the same process that was identified for the natural heritage refinements, the refinements of that mapping.
Okay.
Through the county's process as well, they have to do, or they're going to do an employment strategy. The purpose is to identify key nodes for employment and then take a look at a strategy for bringing policy forward to provide for protections for employment uses. Staff's comments generally are indicating that Hillsdale needs to be included and considered as an employment node because of its proximity to the 400 series highway. And in addition to that, there needs to be additional policy protections for employment lands that are located within the settlement area of Midhurst. That's specifically important because the lands in Midhurst, with the work that's going on with the current development, is that those lands could be the first lands, aside from any employment land in Elmville, that are going to be fully serviced with municipal water and sanitary. So staff thought it was important to make sure that the comments were relayed immediately to identify those areas as priority employment areas for the municipality, so that they get picked up as part of any consideration through the county's employment strategy.
Okay.
The county also has to go through a climate change strategy, and that's in line with the growth plan and the provincial policy statement. The purpose of the strategy is to take a look at various ways to plan to essentially reduce the carbon footprint of municipalities and development. What it looks at is transportation options. It takes a look at other types of development, for example, intensification and looking to intensification to reduce the land area that's needed for development, to essentially try to come up with a more climate-friendly planning approach. Staff's comment is essentially that whatever climate change looks like, there should not be additional burden placed on municipalities. That shouldn't be from a financial aspect. That shouldn't be from a servicing aspect. And those types of burdens or impacts to municipalities will need to be considered to ensure that practical approaches are arrived at based on the climate that we're in the county. So, for example, there was a push for some of the urban development for laneways to provide for more compact form. And the idea there was that laneways would provide for more sufficient compact form, or more efficient compact form. It would essentially keep cars off the park, not on the road, which would allow for more narrow streetscapes, which would provide for transit, and in essence would reduce the carbon footprint. However, from an operational standpoint, these laneways were considered to be problematic because from a snow removal perspective, it would have put more onus and more issues from an operations side to try to clear municipal laneways. So it's those types of considerations that might be Toronto focused that need to be looked at when we're talking about climate climate strategies and what may work somewhere else might not necessarily work in the climate where you're proposing the same type of a strategy. The next one is a water management strategy is listed as something that needs to be completed through this process. The strategy is essentially looking at natural heritage features and the protection of features on a watershed-wide basis. Staff has come forward in saying that the advisory committees, the Agricultural Advisory Committee and Planning Advisory Committee, should be brought into the loop on any policies moving forward for that. The expectation is that the strategy shouldn't create inefficiencies in the ability of the municipalities to provide services. And really, in order to comment, staff require those draft policies to be able to provide and try to assess what the impacts of the watershed management strategy may be. So in other words, what would be the impact on residents? What would be the impact on the farming community? And ultimately, what does that mean for the municipality in trying to provide for a level of service while still trying to protect natural heritage features on a watershed management level? So the key takeaway there is that the advisory committees will, again, play a big part in providing comments on the water management strategy. And again, that is another matter that will also come before council for consideration before there's any additional comments brought forward through the MCR process.
So will this involve a complete review of the adequacy of clean water, given the development that's coming for the township, for both those who are on municipal water plus well water?
Mayor Allen, it'll most likely look at best practices in development to protect the watershed. So for example, it would be things like limiting the amount of tree removal where you've got an existing cold water, river running through a settlement area. It may be additional policy direction with respect to agricultural areas to maintain stream health. So it's those types of considerations that would come up through this strategy that staff felt that it would be important to bring forward through the advisory committees, because there would most likely be an impact on residents, developers, farmers.
So I think the answer to my question was no.
That is correct.
Okay, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Director Spagnuol. I'm just wondering how the NVCA and the Severn Sound people fit into the watershed thing. I kind of got the impression that they kind of hold reign over what our policies might be, or is it the same as they would set a policy, and as long as our framework works within their policy, that's the way we proceed? Could you just kind of help me with that one, Director?
Director Spagnuol.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Cabral. Essentially, the conservation authorities would play a big role in trying to, identify what needs to go into a watershed management strategy, because they have the expertise and knowledge of the ecosystem, the sheds, the watersheds that we're working in. They've done all the background information. So essentially, what would happen is the conservation authorities would provide comment to the county, and the county would most likely come forward with draft policies to reflect those comments and what the conservation authorities feel need to be included in a water management a watershed management strategy. It's once those policies are formed that staff, the advisory committees, and council would have the ability to take a look at what those policies say to determine impact. So they would definitely play a key role in the watershed management strategy.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
The next consideration is the growth management aspect of it, and this will be a component of the MCR process that there will definitely be a lot of back and forth and stakeholder interest in. The reason why I say that is because it requires municipalities to identify a settlement area hierarchy. For the purposes of Springwater, staff's comments are indicating that the hierarchy would mean that the settlement areas of Elmville, Midhurst, and Hillsdale would be considered major settlement areas. The settlement areas of Center Vespra and Snow Valley would be intermediate. And then the balance of the settlement areas would be identified as minor settlements. The reason why that's important to identify is because the county through this process will be required to allocate population, not only to Springwater, but to the other area municipalities. And the idea is that by placing a hierarchy on settlement areas, that the settlement areas that are in the major category would essentially accept the majority of the population that the county would be looking to allocate. The hierarchy is based on a number of things. The key being servicing and the ability to service development, whether or not there's municipal sanitary and municipal water. The other considerations are the populations. The other considerations are the ability for those settlement areas to provide for employment. And essentially it would be the aim to have major settlement areas would be your settlement areas that can be considered as being the most complete communities within the municipality as per the definitions within the provincial policy statement and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The next part of this, the work that's being done is related to intensification targets. It's through this process that the county will have to assign intensification targets to individual municipalities. Staff's comments are indicating that the current 15% intensification target should be maintained because there are limited opportunities within the built boundaries of the settlement areas of Midhurst and Elmville to accommodate what we would consider to be true intensification where there are higher densities being focused into those areas. Mayor Allen, you will recall that there was an intensification strategy that was completed as part of the official plan review process. And what it identified was that under the 15% target in the growth plan, the municipality would have to provide approximately, I think it was 860 new residential units. And they would have to be located within the built boundaries of Elmville and Midhurst. And as a result of that, the corridor study took it one step farther to say that the corridor study really, the Bayfield Street corridor really reflected or was really the only area where there was a significant amount of land where this intensification could be supported just because of the land area that's available and the fact that there's municipal services that are planning to come on stream. So staff was of the opinion and thought that the existing 15% intensification target was appropriate, given that we're going through the work right now to identify how intensification can occur, specifically within the corridor of Bayfield Street. And also that if the township was to go with a higher intensification, it would be difficult at this point to reach that target because we currently don't have enough land available in Elmville, and we're still waiting on getting the servicing in place for the corridor for Bayfield Street. So it was thought that the 15% intensification should be upheld.
Okay.
The next consideration is greenfield density targets. So essentially what that is lands that are located outside of the built boundaries. And the township's greenfield density target right now sits at 32 persons and jobs per hectare. And essentially, again, staff is indicating in the comments in the report that density should be maintained across the board. If the municipality was to entertain a higher density, essentially what that would do is bring in draft plan applications that would essentially be more dense and have more units on the outskirts of the settlement areas versus a model where your densities are typically aimed to be in your core areas, which is something that is, it's counterproductive in the sense that you want to try to direct more intensification, higher densities to your core areas to support some of the services and amenities that you look to establish in your downtowns. So for example, I'll go back to the Bayfield Street corridor. You know, with the Hasty track going there and looking at the provision of those types of services and amenities, with commercial uses being focused in that area, there needs to be some critical mass of residential development. And the idea is that that should be your higher densities to be able to support the commercial businesses that are needed there, along with some of the institutional buildings and services that are going to be provided within that downtown area.
Okay.
And then the last comment is really specific to the Elmville Active Seniors residence in Elmville, and it's really staff bringing it to the county's attention that it is through the MCR process that the lands that are subject to the site plan application that the EASR will be bringing forward should be included within the settlement area. This is based on the fact that the ministry or the minister approved the zoning order to permit those institutional uses. And it's for that purpose that staff is of the opinion that those lands should be included within the settlement area, because it would reflect the approvals of the minister. There's no question that the approvals are in place. So therefore that would represent a minor settlement area expansion. And then as part of the report, staff tried to capture the discussion that occurred with respect to the motion that was brought forward with respect to expanding the settlement area of Elmville, and also taking a look at additional commercial opportunities south along Bayfield Street. And in essence, what this is saying and what staff has provided is essentially looking for county staff to provide preliminary comments with respect to the expansion of the settlement area of Elmville, and also outline what type of justification the county would be looking at through their MCR process for that expansion, recognizing that council hasn't landed on a decision as to whether or not council is going to move forward on this, but it's information that is needed to inform any future considerations of council. So it essentially puts it on the county's radar that council has had this discussion, and council would like a little bit more information as to whether or not it is something that could be considered and that staff is willing to consider at the county level. And essentially the same questions have been posed for the Bayfield Street commercial review, to essentially have the county provide some preliminary comments on the prospect of adding additional commercial uses within the 1 kilometer buffer of the Greenbelt buffer between the city of Barrie and Springwater, and also to identify what justification the county would be looking at through their MCR process, so that council could arrive at an informed decision with respect to how to move forward on those two key items. The next steps following this discussion, and also subject to council's comments, will be a letter that will be drafted by staff to incorporate the comments within the report, and also to include any additional comments that council would like to see move forward as part of this discussion. And that concludes my presentation, Mayor Allen. Thank you.
Okay, further comments? Councillor Hannah?
If we go to page 5, it says staff comments, and I don't know if everybody can do that, so I'll just take the liberty of reading it, Mayor, if I can. It says the Township of Springwater is currently conducting an official plan review update with the goal to prepare a new official plan. Work completed to date includes the following: discussion paper, Springwater official plan, growth management strategy, Springwater official plan 2018, draft population-related employment land study 2021, draft intensification strategy, Springwater official plan review 2021, draft Bayfield Street corridor study, Springwater official plan review 2021. Then it says at the bottom, all of the above noted reports have been circulated to the county and its staff. Recommendation that this report generally be relied upon to inform the county's MCR process, with the expectation that all the update to the township's official plan will be required 1 year after the update county official plan is in effect. My question being is that for these three of these reports or draft reports, in our recommendation, should we be suggesting that, or the letter that Director Spagnell pointed out that's going to be going forward, should we be indicating in there that these are draft reports? Once we have final reports, we'll also be providing further information for the county to consider in their MCR once we have something other than just draft reports.
That's a good point. Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through to Councillor Hannah, I agree. We can definitely put that in the letter to verify that that final reports will be submitted to the county once they're completed.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Just wondering if it all should be included in the recommendation that we're going to be sending forward at the end of this meeting.
Yeah, we can look at that and tweak it. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing other comments, so that concludes then. So I need a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw, please. Oh, Clerk Ainsworth wants to make a point.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. We do need to deal with the motion included in item.
Oh, yeah, no,
3.1.
sorry, I gapped. Mover and seconder for the action item report motion, please. Cards up. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Ma. That the report from the Director of Planning Services regarding the County Municipal Comprehensive Review Springwater comments dated May 31 be received, and that staff, here's where we have to work in the something in the draft, the staff be authorized to submit townships comments as generally outlined in the report prior to the section 26 meeting for the county's municipal comprehensive review process, subject to final. What would be appropriate wording there, Director Spagnell, to reflect the fact that we're commenting on drafts and could have further comment on final reports? Director Spagnell and Clerk Ainsworth. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I think it would be appropriate to indicate that the applicable background reports will be submitted in their final form once received by council.
Okay, we'll give Clerk Ainsworth. Yeah, that might be a little confusing. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. My only concern, I guess, is, the consultants' reports that have come forth so far that we're going to rely on as far as the draft recommendations are concerned. I have to be honest with you. Some of those reports I don't support entirely. And so, saying that when the final report comes to council, then they can rely on that. At some point in time, council's going to have to decide what they do want to do and what they don't want to do based on the consultant's report. So I don't know how you're going to phrase it. I think it kind of says comprehensive review process subject to final additions from council, but I don't know if that covers it by itself either. I'd hate to step forward with everybody in the belief that we're going to do one thing and then later on down the road find out that maybe that's not what the direction of council is going to be. So I don't know how you're going to address that.
What's the coordination, Director Spagnell, for those logistics?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I think the coordination would essentially be that there's a recognition, and I stated this in the report, that the township will need to be and will need to require, or will be required to update its official plan within 1 year of the county. So essentially, the reports will be relied upon on an interim basis. And then what'll have to happen is once the reports are brought back to council, they would be finalized and sent over to the county. Now, that said, if there's something, so for example, we've got the Bayfield Street corridor and the consideration of commercial uses along Bayfield Street. It's identified in the report that that's something that can be dealt with through the MCR process, but not necessarily through the official plan review at this time, because in 1 year after the county's plan is in place, the township will have to update its official plan again. So really what it comes down to is council's comments being very clear when we're dealing specifically with the MCR process, in that if there's certain things that council wants to see done through that, then council can identify that as we move through the process, even though there may be things that council at this point, certain councillors at this point, don't agree with within the draft policies.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you. And I appreciate Councillor Cabral's concerns in that often when we go through these processes, individual councillors have comments, but at what point do our individual comments then become direction of council? So we sit through this and we listen to resident concerns and updated policy, and we continue through the track. So I think for myself anyway, is the highlighted concerns I have going through this. At what point does this council come together, and at what meeting do we make our decision as to what we are putting forward for our comprehensive review?
Director Spagnol.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. So really, council will make decisions on policy when there's draft policies that are before council through the township's official plan review process.
Yeah.
And it's at that point when there will be additional conversations with stakeholders and council. And once council's at a point of adopting certain policies, that's really where council has the opportunity to dive into the specifics as it relates to the official plan review.
Follow on.
It would be
Oh,
a
sorry,
similar,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It would be a similar process for the county's MCR as well.
And I can appreciate that. Thank you, and through you to Director Spengler. And I can appreciate that. And as we move through this, as the county's moving through theirs, I often feel that we get to, the meeting where we're supposed to be adopting something, and then we as members of council feel it's like our last opportunity to say something. And I don't want it to get to that point, but I don't want to be hindering a process as we continue to move forward. I want to let due process take place. So if we as a council can just be notified as to at what meeting our individual concerns are to be laid out, so that our concerns on the table, we can then decide as a council what our concerns as a whole and continue to move forward, because this process has been in place and we've been doing this for so long that I would hate to get to that last meeting where we think there's going to be a rubber stamp happen and then we're like, what, this is my last chance to say something, here's my comments. So I would like to make those comments along the way, but make them at the most appropriate and applicable time.
Yeah, I took those comments, but be reminded that we as councillors were invited to submit comments to planning on the three reports through, over the last half year, and that still is open for us to do.
And I appreciate that, Mayor Allen, and through you, individual members of council have the opportunity to make comments, but direction of a council as a whole is a different comment. So
No,
I'm just curious at what
I
time
agree.
we as a council vote to bring those individual concerns forward as a council
Yep.
comment, not an individual councilor's comment. Thank you.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. I think generally we're just trying to state so the county is aware that some of these reports are draft and are subject to change. And if we could tweak the recommendation just to include that, and I think that would be clear in my mind going forward that the county is aware of the fact that there could be changes. And I think not to do that is doing a disservice to the county as well.
No, I think we're capturing that. So go ahead, Clerk Ainsworth, and read what you have, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I will need some input from Director Spagnol. I captured the first part of the verbiage he did provide, but I don't think it reflects what council is looking to get. From my understanding, it's to ensure that the county is aware that the background documentation and reports that the township is submitting are still in draft form and will be submitted as final reports once they have been adopted by council. Is that the understanding?
Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor
And
Allen.
and once the reports that we're reviewing are in final form as well, right?
Yes, correct, Mayor Allen. So I think the wording, it definitely, it's definitely something that can be relayed to the county and it's clear. The only thing that I would indicate is that final approval of the reports. It's essentially that the reports would be received by council in their final form. The reason why I say that is because they are information in their background reports that would ultimately fuel policy that would be drafted, at which point council would have the ability to adopt policy or suggest revisions to policy. So it's a fine detail, but it's really a matter of identifying that these would be received by council to inform the policy process for the official plan review.
Clerk Ainsworth, can you toss it up on the screen and we can look at the words and maybe agree on finalization of them, please?
Is council able to see my screen?
Yes, it's a screen within a screen, right?
Yes, the wording is right here where I'm circling.
The council, okay, go ahead and read it, please. The council now,
That council
Oh.
advise that the township's applicable background reports be submitted to the county of Simcoe once received in their final form. And this would be an amendment to the main motion. Director Spagnol, any comments or suggestions?
it's confusing. The council advised that the township's applicable background, the council advises that the township's applicable background reports be submitted to the county of Simcoe once received in their final form, but that doesn't express us commenting with our final comments once those background reports are finalized.
What I would suggest, Mayor Allen, is that where it says council advise that the township's background reports and studies associated with the townships or associated with the official plan review be submitted to the county of Simcoe once considered and finalized by Springwater Council.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Cogwell?
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm just trying to follow along here. And are staff able to submit comments on behalf of Springwater Council without our final approval? I just don't, and I don't understand the point of this. I think that the point of, from what I understood anyway, was that we are continuing to move through the process. So tonight is not the final decision. So I think that from what I understood from Councillor Hannah's proposal of amendment was that we are continuing to review and that comments will not be submitted until finalized. So even at that, I don't think staff can submit our comments without our approval anyway.
No, but I think that's where, I mean, comments are being submitted now, but we're trying to get across the point that these are draft comments in effect based on draft reports. Is that not right, Director Spagnol? Something is being submitted now, and the point is these are not necessarily our final council agreed upon points, right?
That is correct, Mary Ellen. So I mean, it's really a matter of just confirming that final studies and reports will be forthcoming. And that these are not to be relied upon, solely on the basis that there will be final reports being submitted to the county.
And
the thing
when the
is-
final reports are being submitted to the county, that also includes, or will, in addition to that, will involve our council's final comments with respect to those finalized reports.
Not necessarily, Mary Ellen, just because the reason why I say that is because these background studies are really for the official plan review. The purpose of submitting those to the county is so that the most current local information with respect to, for example, the intensification strategy, where it speaks to the amount of units that the township would have to accommodate within build boundaries, is considered to support that the staff comment with the 15% intensification target. So the idea is that the official plan review process and the associated reports are for the official plan review for the township of Springwater, but would provide the local information for the county to base their policy on as well.
Okay. So we're dealing with this as an amendment to the original motion as opposed to just adjusting the original motion. Is that right?
That's correct.
And do we have a mover and seconder for this?
We would require a mover and seconder for the amendment.
Okay, please. Councillor Hannah, seconder. Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Any further discussion on this amendment? All those in favor? That is carried. Now the main motion. Do we have a mover and seconder for that?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Do we want that read, or are you okay with that, council? We're okay. Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw, please. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral, that the bylaw 2021-065 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on May 31, 2021, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That is carried. And a mover and seconder to adjourn, please. Councillor Ma and Councillor Cabral, that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 5:54 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on June 2nd at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. We'll see you in half an hour.
And thank you, council. Please use the same link for the 6:30 meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Renee, can we just leave our cameras off then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.